And they don't want the ceremonies going, so we always had to go off to the little edges and stuff like this. But here, we're right in the big foyer, and this temple behind us is literally the temple of the skull. Well, that should have told us some pieces of information that was going to happen right then and there. After he starts doing his various songs in Mayan and his young son doing the translation, we really got in this really nice ceremonial space, and he had this bag beside him that looked like a bowling ball bag. Then after a little while, he leaned over, unzipped it, pulls it up, and has a crystal skull and hands it to me. And you can imagine, all of a sudden, I've got the 8th of the 13th crystal skulls in my hand. And I go through this ceremony. Of course, I do the mudras and hand it around in our group, and we all did this, and we all did this ceremony. And then he says, this is just the introduction. If you want to do the real ceremony, we have to go out to the Forgotten Temple. So we're literally bushwhacking through the jungle. I'm saying bushwhacking through the jungle. We're eating termites and stuff like this as we're walking up through this thing, bushwhacking our way up. And we keep on climbing this high mountain and high mountain and high mountain. And before we know it, we get to the top, and they had this whole ceremonial place set out for our group. And the crystal skull was now placed in the middle of the ceremony, and we went through this lengthy ceremony. And there's several people from Calgary at this event. And we got to make a flower essence or crystal essence of this skull. Going through this process was very enlivening to me, to say the least. On our way back, I literally went into what you would call a trance. And during that trance, I had all this information flood into me, which is very cool. You know, you get to have a journey and you didn't have to take any drugs. Cool. So, this journey is a very extensive journey, and I don't have time to share it. I'm theoretically sharing it in a book one of these days, because literally I had about a 600-page book downloaded to me at that point in time. We're just going to look at a few little snippets that came out of that experience. One of the first snippets that came out of the experience, and I literally have people photographing me going into this trance and sitting there in the back of a restaurant like this. But the first part, I literally got a bunch of data points, and the first part was, I became a woman. Hey, what guy doesn't want to become a woman for a little while, huh? So I went through that process, but I was a 250-year-old woman. But one of the first things I had to do was apologize to the group I was with, because there was many of the elders among me that were 450 years old. But I was selected as being the speaker. I was selected as the one who was connected the most to Aiwa, being able to connect most to the spirit of the planet. And because of that process, I was a journey shaman, and I'd gone through a journeying process. I wasn't living in the Yucatan. Where I was literally on the steeps in Mongolia, right near Lake Baikal. So it's kind of on the Siberian-Mongolian border, where I ended up being. And it was just literally like an avatar situation. I physically took it over. Oh, by the way, it was 26,000 years ago. It's a very ancient period of time. As I say, I was 250 years old. There's many people living up to 450 years old. And this is just what the Christian Bible says, by the way. At one point in time, they had people living that long. I was in a period, what was called the Golden Age for us. And I realized through the trances as I was going into the mediumship I was going through, that these Golden Age was about to end, and we were going to go through this process that would take us 26,000 years to come back to. This 26,000 years actually became a very significant period of time, because that's how long it takes us to go around the center of our galaxy. Of course, I didn't know any of this at that point in time. But literally, this shaman experience was created for me to be able to go through the story, and I'll have to leave time for the story at another period of time. But one of the things I did is I took an elixir that helped me go through time travel. By being able to travel through time, I could go down to this period of time and find what's happened and come back and go through the process we've gone through. So I can say that going back to the future, I literally went back 26,000 years to be able to figure out what's going to happen in the next couple of years. And the process that we're going through right now, we've gone through at least 5 times before, if not more. The Mayans and the Hopis have mapped 4 to 5 of these events in the past. By the way, if anyone's looked at the Anastasia books that they have out there, the Ringing Cedar books, she talks about how they follow the Vedic way. And they live in Siberia, and they live to be hundreds of years old, and they still live in Siberia right now. And I actually journeyed to Siberia and Mongolia to find out more about this and spend some time around them. The interesting thing is that they lived the Vedic way 26,000 years ago, way before the oral tradition of the Vedas was created in the subcontinent of India. How did that happen? So, of course, when I come out of all this kind of things, the kind of person I am, I go on the internet and try to find out about this stuff. Because this group of people that I was involved with is called the Flying Reindeer people. I found out there actually was a group of people called the Flying Reindeer people. And they lived on the Mongolian-Siberian border, and they created monuments to themselves. And this is a stele, a monument that they created, that they don't have a definitive date on it, but they know it's tens of thousands of years old. And there's writing on this. And this writing, these glyphs or a pictogram, are some of the oldest pictograms in history. They're the group of shamans that I was talking about. Right on the border of Baikal, Lake Baikal. So, the Mongolians, and during this mission I had, is to tell the Mongolians what they had to do over the next 26,000 years, including everything from Genghis Khan to going over the Bering Strait and the whole journey. Interesting to note, if you were to be an upper class Mayan, one of the things you had to do is have a Mongolian birthmark on the bottom of your spine in the shape of a pyramid to be an elder among the Mayans. The Mayans are genetically connected. As the Hopis are, the Dene and the Cree for sure have Mongolian genes in them. That's been shown. So, there is some kind of connection, and of course that whole Bering Strait thing. I think there was people way before that. I'm not saying that's the only way they got across here, but this is a very long period of time ago. I'm going to try to skip over some of this so we don't spend too much time. This was the herb that was used as elixir, Amanita muscaria, sometimes just called a toadstool. This is a very psychedelic mushroom, by the way. I want to be real specific with this. If you don't take this herb properly, you die. So I'm not suggesting you all run out and try to get some, okay? It's a very dangerous herb, only be used in the hands of a shaman. But there's a myth around this mushroom. If you take it, you enter the realms of God. Well, as you probably understand, I grew up in the 60s, right? So in the early 60s, or the late 60s, early 70s, I heard this myth that Watson had written in his book, you enter the realms of God, so I decided I was going to take some. And fortunately, I had enough knowledge of herbs and did the literature and stuff like that. I knew how to make the preparation and stuff like that, so I made the preparation. And I was out in the woods up near Jasper, and I took it. And of course, I'd already gone through many years of doing LSD and stuff like that at that point in time. So I kind of had my sea legs in that psychedelic realm. So I was expecting these massive hallucinations. So I'm out in the woods walking along thinking I'm supposed to be in the realms of God. And I'm not. And I gotta admit, there's a little bit of me that was PO'd. But all of a sudden I was crossing this little creek, one of those little wee nice arcing bridges, get halfway across, and all of a sudden, you know how in the mountains and the prairies sometimes the clouds open up and a beam of light shines down and it's really feeling very holy and stuff like that? Well, that happened, but it was a little different this time. There was a group of angels sliding down it, like they're sliding down a banister going, hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Well, that wasn't quite the realms of God, but it was the realms of angels. That was good enough for me that day. Holy doty, that was cool. So the myth is that if you take this, you get to enter into this realm. But that doesn't help you time travel. Because if you take the urine of a reindeer that's eaten this, you get to enter the head of God. And that's why the people were called the Flying Reindeer people. As being called the Flying Reindeer people, what these people would do is they'd tie the reindeer up, they'd feed them this mushroom, they'd collect their urine, and they would drink it as an elixir, and it could help them time travel. I haven't tried that experiment yet. I haven't got any reindeers to cooperate, actually. And I'm not quite sure if I was going to drink the urine of a reindeer yet. I haven't quite done that far in the experiment. But that's Moglid, this person I entered, had done, and she went through that process. And that's where they said they got the wisdom of the Vedas from. Go figure. Our ancestors are mushrooms. Now, when I say this, there's a guy named Gordon Wasson that wrote a book called Soma, the Divine Mushroom of Immortality, and he says the Rig Veda is based on it.